There's a contemplative in all of us, almost strangled, but still alive, who craves quiet enjoyment of the now, and longs to touch the seam of the garment of silence which makes us one. So, if you want to make the responses, you can. If you want to just listen to the words, you can. So welcome to this ancient place, house of prayer for many, home to God who come. Welcome to this gathering place, friend and stranger, saint and sinner, in all who gather here. Come with hope or hesitation. Come with hope or hesitation. Come with joy or yearning. All who hunger, all who thirst for life in all its fullness. Generous God, touch us through your grace. And so we just take a moment to just still ourselves and let go of all the things that have concerned us today. We leave them now at the door, and we come to this quiet, still space. And in the stillness of this space and in the words, we feel perhaps God's presence with us, but hopefully we feel a sense of stillness and quiet. But hopefully we feel a sense of stillness and quietness. Oh Christ, you are within each one of us. It is not just the interior of these walls. We are your temple, not made by human hands. We are your body. You are nearer than breathing, closer than hands or feet. Ours are the eyes on this your world. Amen. So we're going to hear a few words now from Matthew's Gospel. We listen now for the word of God.
Matthew 6, verses 5 to 13. Whenever you pray, do not be like hypocrites, for they love to. Do not be like hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. When you are praying, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pray then in this way. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And do not bring us to the time of trial, but rescue us from the evil one.
to share a few words of reflection with you. Anne Morrow Lindbergh. I don't know if any of you have heard of her. Probably not. She was an author, among many other things, in the 1950s, married to a famous war hero in America. She had 5 children. She loved her husband and children very dearly. She had lots of friends, a fulfilled life in many ways. She was quite an adventurous. When her husband, who was a pilot, and she learned to be a navigator so she could accompany him on some of his flights, and she wrote stories about their adventures. And yet there was a small voice inside of her telling her that there was something missing in her life. And she says, "The problem is how to remain in the midst of the distractions of life, how to remain no matter what centrifugal forces tend to pull one off centre." And she goes on to say, one answer, and perhaps a first step, is in simplification of life, in cutting out some of the distractions. Takes herself off to a small wooden hut on a beach for 2 weeks on her own. Today we'd call it a silent retreat. And she discovers that contemplation is the missing part. And she comes back to her world, life, and she plans to rebalance her life by intentionally putting into place times for contemplation. And I think there are countless people who could identify with Anne. It's a very, very human story. A small book that she wrote called The Gifts from the Sea, when she talks about her time in the hut on the beach. So if you want to borrow it, you're very welcome to ask me. But I like this story because when Anne felt that emptiness in her life, that something was missing, she did something positive about it, and it made all the difference to her. Yes, she was in a privileged position to be able to delegate her responsibilities and take herself away for 2 weeks. So a challenge we have perhaps is how we can be intentional about finding space for contemplation in our own lives, in our own time, and in our space with the limits that our life imposes. And we might add that how do we walk alongside others on that journey too? So what I want to do is to spend a short time reflecting on what contemplation is, with the hope that a clearer understanding helps us to make contemplation part of our lives too. We can understand what it is, this contemplation. So, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not a guru. But these are some of the things that I've gleaned from reading people like Thomas Merton, who was referred to now, and others, many mystics and contemplatives. So contemplation is about a new way of seeing and of God. It's about seeing things as they really are, rather than seeing things as we have made them or wished that they could be. At the root of contemplation is an awareness that God and the world are inseparable. It's more than seeing God's hand as the creator. I think it's much more than that. When we look at nature, we might see God is in nature. The leap is to see that all of nature, All is to see that all of nature, all of creation is infused with God. There is no separation between creation and the Creator. This is what reality looks like. Thomas Merton talks about contemplation of an illusion. According to Thomas Merton, the contemplative is someone who has taken on board a new way of seeing and who therefore lives in a state of disillusionment. To be disillusioned, Merton says, is to discover the reality behind the illusions which dominate and preoccupy our lives and the world. To be disillusioned through an openness to the divine presence in all things, is to have discovered that God is the deepest reality of all that there is. The contemplative way, therefore, is a journey of discovery where we ask some very fundamental human questions. What is real? So who is God? Well, at the heart of the contemplative way is the simple and yet profound insight that the nearer we get to God, the less we see. And there's a beautiful image in another book. That this is a book called Dear God, This Is Anna. I'm sure some of you will have read that book. Dear God, This Is Anna, a book written by someone called Finn, about a little girl's insight. A book written by someone called Finn, about a little girl's insights into God. And Anna says God is like a mountain. If you look from a great way off, you can see the whole thing, but you can't touch it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, but you can't touch it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you don't see any detail, you can't really know much about it, but you see the whole of it from a distance. The nearer you get, the less you see the whole of it, but you are more intimate with it, more at one with it. You can touch it, you can smell it, you can feel it, you can lie on it. You are intimate with it the closer you get. So from a distance we might think we know all we need to know about the mountain, but in reality we know very little. The nearer we get, the more questions we have, the more we realise we don't know, and yet the more we feel connected. It's a paradox in a way, isn't it? But this, Anna, is what Anna says is what God. But this, Anna, is what Anna says is what God is like. Reality about God is that all words and images and concepts fall away as our illusions about God fall away to reveal the reality about God. The less we can or even want to just be part of that divine presence. So who am I? Who are you? Just as important to the contemplative way is the discovery of my own identity. Any discovery in relation to God. The process involves death and new life. It is death to the old self, rooted in so many illusions about myself. The illusions that what I look like and what I achieve in life are the most important. The illusions that what I look like and what I achieve in life are the most important things. Or even that old tired advert, because I'm worth it. Illusions about whether people like me or not, or if I'm good at something or not. We are so much more illusions that we have about ourselves. The contemplative way is a birth into a new self, rooted in the reality of God, rooted in who I am and rooted in the world around me. knowing that I'm a youth of God, and yet my identity exists only because of the wider human community in which I am a part of. Knowing that we are all, the whole of creation, united in God. And so finally, united in God. And so finally, what is real? The third question that Merton asks is about the world at large. What is real about this world that we live in? In contemplation is all about a new way of seeing. And if this leads to a stripping away of illusions about God and myself, then contemplation must inevitably help us to see the world in a new way too. It's like falling in love with the world. Contemplation is not about rejecting the world in any way. It's not about monks and hermits separating themselves from the world. But it's about experiencing the world with a clarity not experienced before. And so, like we want the best for the world, we have compassion for the world, we care for it, we want to nurture it. There's a sense among many people of faith that God's Spirit is at work in the world in our present time in a most profound way. Drawing people back to that ancient tradition of contemplation, of just sitting with God in silence. And as we reflect on the need for us to love the world and all that dwells in it, which also means loving God and ourselves, of course, we know that our love is so greatly needed, especially at this time. It is. Contemplation draws closer to seeing in a new way the reality of life. And so I just want to mention the reading that Carol read for us, because Jesus was a contemplative. I've no doubt in my mind, I'm convinced of it. That he was a contemplative. And he says, go into your inner room and pray to the Father. The inner room, I think, is a metaphor for the inner, silent, still space inside each of us, where we are at one with God. That's what the inner room is. This is where we touch, smell, taste, love God, where we find what is true. So after we've had 15 minutes of silence now, there will be some music which will come on at the end of the silence. And the music is the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. So this is the language that Jesus would have used. And it's very beautiful to hear these words in the language that he would have spoken. And we might imagine hear these words in the language that he would have spoken. And we might imagine him saying these same words to his disciples who asked him to teach them how to pray. This is what he would have said to them. So that's after the meditation. This is what he would have said to them. So that's after the meditation. And so as we come to our 15 minutes of silence, it's important when we come to silence that we still the outside of our body first. So we get ourselves sitting upright in the seat, feet firmly on the ground, and we put our hands It's always better to close your eyes while you're meditating. But if you find that you're not comfortable with that, then just look at the flame of the candle or look at the picture on the screen. But just focus on your mind. Closing your eyes is best. And to keep our minds focused, once we've got our body still, we recommend using a short prayer phrase or word. Again, Maranatha is an Aramaic word that Jesus himself would have known. And it simply means, "Come, Lord." And so every time we say Maranatha, we are inviting Jesus to be with us once more. We will inevitably start being distracted by our thoughts and images in our minds, and as soon as we recognize that we're thinking again, we just simply tell ourselves we're thinking again. We just simply tell ourselves that's a thought and let it go, and come back to saying Maranatha. And we meditate like this for 15 minutes. Meditate like this for 15 minutes. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, you touched the earth and shared our life. You know our human struggles, our weaknesses, and you know our human struggles, our weaknesses, and our fears. And so now we pray for our leaders. We pray for those who are led. things of hope and reconciliation. For all we should be and all we can amend, Christ in your love renews. For all life has in store for us, for all life has in store for us, and all life may demand of us, Christ in your love prepares. For the life of the world and the love of its people, Christ in your love commissions. Amen. So as we come towards the end of this service, I'd just like to read to you this poem is called Keep Quiet. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it's all about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might erupt and interrupt this sadness of our never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death, Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now, earth, and you keep quiet, and I will go. So in gratitude for this moment, this place, those around us, Christ among us, we give ourselves to you, our God. Take us out to live as changed. Ask much of us, expect much of us, enable much of us, encourage many through us, so we may live to your glory, both as inhabitants of earth and citizens of the kingdom of heaven. Amen. So go in peace, and may the Holy God surprise you on the way. Christ Jesus be your company, and the Spirit lift up your life. Amen.
Go in peace, go in kindness, go in love, go in faith, go in faith. Leave the day behind us. Day is done. Go in grace. Let us go, grace. Let us go into the dark, not afraid, not alone. Let us hope by safely to arrive at home. Let us hope by some good pleasure safely to arrive